Welcome to our tnAchieves Mentor Kickoff webinar. We're really excited that you are here with us this morning, and even more excited that you decided to mentor with us, students from the class of 2023. So glad that you're here. Give you a couple. I'm Graham Thomas. I am our Chief Community and Government Affairs Officer at tnAchieves. Tyler Ford, who is our Senior Director of Mentors, is here with me today. I'll give you a kind of a quick preview. So what we're going to do today is give you some information kind of about where we are in the process right now, a little bit of the kind of like mechanics of how mentoring is going to work in 2023, and then some tips, best practices, and some kind of expectations. We're going to cover all that this morning. It looks like many of you have already found the chat at the bottom. As you may have noticed, your cameras and your microphones are off. And so that's the way for you to communicate with us. Ben Sterling on our team is also here. He is operating all the back end. So as you're asking questions, he may reply to some of your questions in the chat. Tyler and I will kind of keep an eye on that. If we see something that's coming up over and over and over again, we'll try to answer that as we're going. But then Ben will join us at the end, and any kind of overriding themes that we get throughout the webinar, he will ask those. So know that we are monitoring your questions. We're going to get through as many of them as we can. It looks like there's about 250 people on here, so we may not be able to get to all of them, but we're going to do our best to get to as many of them as possible. So with that, Ben, if you want to pull up our first slide, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about kind of where we are today in a big landscape. So on Monday, you received your list from tnAchieves. You may notice, for those of you that have mentored with us previously, that you may have more students than you've ever had before. Most of our mentors, about half of our mentors this year, have 10 students. That's the most that anyone can work with. Other mentors may have as few as 3, 5, 7, 8, anywhere really between 3 and 10. The number of students that you received is a direct reflection of two things. First, how many students applied at the high school of your choice. And then second, how many mentors we found that wanted to work at that high school. The really exciting announcement that I have for you this morning, and then I'm going to talk to you about this slide that is not such an exciting announcement, but the really exciting announcement is that the 2023 class of Tennessee Promise applicants is the largest class we've had yet. 64,000 students applied. So for those of you that got 10, it's just one of the reasons is that we have more students than we have ever had before. If you got a less than 10, it just means that we found enough mentors to work at that high school that we didn't need to give everyone their 10. So we did one of these webinars yesterday, and we had a lot of questions about why they got paired, why each mentor got paired with the number of students they did. So a little background there. If you have mentored with us previously, you also know that this is the earliest you've ever received your student list from tnAchieves. This slide is why. So you can see that since the pandemic hit in 2019, our college going rate in Tennessee has decreased 9 percentage points. This is, in hard numbers, that is 7,000 less students went to college in 2021 than in 2019. Now, you might be looking at this and thinking like, oh, what about the class of 2022? They're in college already. That is correct. They're in college right now, but we don't have that data yet. So we're not sure where the college going rate fell for this year, but it's dropped 9 percentage points. Just over half of our students in Tennessee are now attending college the fall right after high school. So we got your student list to you sooner than ever before, so that you can begin working with students, keeping them excited about going to college, helping them navigate this process sooner than anyone has ever come in and checked them for. Obviously, we have counselors in the high schools that are working with them, but we believe that getting an additional caring adult to students now will be a difference maker for students as they are navigating the college going process. Tennessee has also led the nation in FAFSA filing. So if you're not familiar with the FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. It is the federal financial aid paperwork. There is a March 1st deadline. Every Tennessee Promise student to remain eligible must file the FAFSA by March 1st. Our FAFSA rate has also declined through COVID, right? It's kind of makes sense. Less students plan to go to college, less students are going to file the FAFSA. I will tell you, we finished second in the country last year. Louisiana beat us by less than 1%. And in Louisiana, it is a high school graduation requirement to file the FAFSA. So in Tennessee, we're really, really good at making sure students file the FAFSA. Now, if you've ever done a FAFSA before, you know that it is long, it is complicated. It's like 160 personal financial questions. You probably don't want to sit down with a student and help them do their FAFSA. Those of you, especially that come from smaller communities in Tennessee, the families probably don't want you to know their personal financial information. So your role in the FAFSA is not going to necessarily be sitting down and doing it with them or pulling it up on a Zoom like this and helping them. Now, if they ask you for that help and you're comfortable with that, by all means, feel free. But we have a ton of resources available here at tnAchieves. We have a staff of 45. Our staff is larger than it has ever been that can hop on a Zoom or a call and help students file the FAFSA. So don't be intimidated by the FAFSA. Even those of you that have mentored with us for many years, you've never been involved in this part of the program before, so we know it's new for everyone. If you need help with it, get that student to us. We will either find them a resource locally or someone on our team will jump in and help them out. So, wanted to answer a couple of questions and kind of get everyone up to speed about why are we where we are today. More students than ever before apply, which means a lot of you have more students to work with than you ever had before. And we got them to you sooner than we ever had because we want to reverse this college going rate trend. The other reason that you all have more students, many of you have more students than you've ever worked with before, is because we used to do get students through the FAFSA deadline anywhere between 85 on a low year and 90% of them on a high year file the FAFSA, which means 10 to 15% of the students were being cut from the pool before we ever paired them with a mentor. So not only do we have the biggest class that we've ever had, we haven't had any requirements that make students ineligible before they get to you. So just kind of keep that in mind as you are looking at your list, and please don't feel overwhelmed by the number. I'm going to talk to you here at the end of the webinar about kind of what the expectation is in working with your students. But for right now, I'm going to kick it over to Tyler. And Tyler's going to talk to you about kind of what's coming up here in the very near future and some of the mechanics of the program. So Tyler.
Thanks, Graham. Really excited and really appreciate everyone for making some time this morning to hop on the webinar. And just want to echo what Graham said. Thank you for mentoring this year. I think we've got some exciting changes coming up for the program in 2020, really late 2022 into 2023. And I think I speak for the entire team when I say we're really excited to be giving you these additional 4 months to be working with your students. If you've mentored with us in the past, we were sending your student list in late February, early March, just a lot later in the year. And now you're going to have these additional 4 months to start connecting with your students, start kind of thinking on their college going plans, and hopefully start getting them moving in a positive direction with regards to their post-secondary plans. So I really do think this is a game changer, and your ability to work with more students is ultimately going to really positively impact some of those most at-risk students that we serve here at tnAchieves. So really, really do appreciate everyone for hopping on and applying to mentor. I want to spend a couple minutes talking through the process and talking through kind of what you do next as a mentor, because you didn't get that student list on Monday, and now it's kind of off to the races in terms of actually connecting with your students and actually building those relationships. So I want to start with that student list itself. Every mentor should have received via email, an email from me, Tyler at tnAchieves.org, on Monday that contained all of your student information. It's a very long email. There's a lot of information in that email. I would encourage you, if you haven't read it yet, make some time to read it, just because we do pack that email full with information and frequently asked questions that can really set you straight as a mentor and make sure you're on the right track as you get started here. So that student list is going to contain information on every student you were paired with. The students you were paired with are going to be based off a couple factors. First of which being your high school preference, right? If you applied to mentor and you indicated that you wanted to work at a specific high school, we paired you with students at that high school. If you applied and you didn't have a high school preference, you said, I'm willing to work anywhere, and Knox County, Davidson County, wherever it happens to be. We paired you at a high school that, as Graham kind of mentioned earlier, had a higher need for mentors. So we worked to get you at a high school that was relatively local to you, but did have that need for need for mentors. What you're going to find on those student lists is that it contains contact information and high school information for every student you are paired with. It's also going to include parent information if they provided it to us on their Tennessee Promise application. One thing I would note with regard to that contact information is that it is the best information, and quite honestly, all of the contact information that we have available on each of your students. That does mean that sometimes the email address might not work. The phone number might not work. The same goes for parent contact information if you've got it. Students provide this to us starting in August of their senior year, all the way up through that November 1st deadline. So you may find that some of your students' contact information does not work. If that is the case, a couple things we can do there. Like I said, it's the best information we've got on your students. So we do not have an alternate email. We don't have an alternate phone number. We don't necessarily have a great way to confirm this. But as a mentor, there's a couple tools in your toolbox that I would say you could use to make sure you do get that student's contact information. First of which is try everything, right? If the email address bounces, try texting them. If the phone number doesn't work, try getting in touch with their parent if you've got their information. A lot of times parents can really be a great asset for you as a mentor in terms of making sure you've got good contact information for their student. You can also use other students in your group. So say, for example, Johnny in your group has bad contact information. Maybe another student in your group is responsive and is kind of in touch with you early on. There's a reasonable chance that those students know each other, right? They have a class together. They're involved in an activity together. So you can get in touch with other students in your group and say, hey, I'm having trouble getting in touch with this student. Do you by chance know their phone number? Do you by chance know their email? And maybe other students in your group can help to get that for you. The final thing here is we are returning to our in-person mandatory meetings this year. So you do have that opportunity in December and January to meet your students face-to-face. And even if up until that point you haven't had good contact information for your students, you're going to see them at that meeting and you're going to be able to sit down and make sure that when you leave there, you do have a way to get in touch with that student. So you've got a number of tools in your toolbox if that contact information isn't quite up to date, but we're always happy to help as we can. If you do run into trouble, if you are having a lot of challenges getting in touch with your students, you can certainly get in touch with our team and we can help to make sure you're able to get in touch with them and have resources to do that. But now that you've gotten that student list and now that you've got everything together for your group, it's really kind of off to the races. You can start reaching out and establishing contact with your students. And there's kind of a couple of best practices that I would keep in mind here. Ben, if you can pull up pages 12 and 13 of our mentor handbook, I'll kind of walk through some of the resources we have available here. So now that you've got that student list, you can start reaching out to your group now. There is no need to wait. You don't need to wait until your meeting to reach out to your group. You can start sending these initial emails, sending these initial text messages really this week to your group. What you're going to find on page 12 of the mentor handbook is this example message from your mentor. I know this can be a bit confusing, the phrasing of it, but this is really your template as a mentor that you can copy and paste into an email and use to reach out to both the parents and the students as you establish this initial contact. So feel free to use this template, but I would also recommend that you personalize this template, only because I think the mentoring role is based on these personal connections, right? It's you getting to know your students, you sharing with your students some of your background. So personalize this template, but use this kind of as your jumping off point to make sure you're getting all of the pertinent information to your students in this initial communication. And you will send this to the parents as well. We always recommend that mentors, as a best practice, reach out to the parents initially, simply because it's just a good idea, right? If you're going to be reaching out to their students, if you're going to be in touch with them for the next however many months, it's just a good idea to let them know, here's who I am, here's why I'm reaching out, and I'm here to serve as a resource for your student. But you may find that in some cases, you are also serving as a resource for the parent. parent. Like I've said before, many of the students we work with are the first in their family to go to college. So in the same way that students may have questions and need help navigating this process, their parents may need a little bit of help as well. And our team is always happy to serve as that resource for parents. And we're always happy to have mentors serve as that resource as well. So reach out to the parents and let them know that just like you're there to help their student, you're there to help them as well if they do have questions along the way. Hopefully your parents, the parents that you're reaching out to, know that their student has applied to Tennessee Promise, know that their student has taken these steps towards going to college. Our team has sent communication to the parents, and we're also sending a digital parent handbook out so that parents have access to many of the same resources that their students do. But if you do find that one of the parents just doesn't necessarily know much about the scholarship, feel free to fill them in, feel free to inform them of why you're connecting with the student. But if you ever get tricky questions, if you ever kind of get into the weeds and need a little bit of help, again, you can reach out to our team and we'll make sure you're on the right track there. One big note with parents is it is not our expectation at Tennessee Achieves that you receive confirmation or a receipt from your parents letting you know that, hey, I've gotten this and it's good to reach out to the students, excuse me. You can reach out to the students really immediately after you send that parent email. We do not expect that you hear from the parents, get confirmation from the parents in order to reach out to the students. You can really do both back to back. It's just a good idea to, again, reach out to the parents first, flag that, and just get in touch with them just like you will their students. So this is going to be your initial communication to your students, but then you'll scroll down to page 13 here. We're going to have additional communication resources for you built in throughout the year. So we ask that you reach out to your students on a bi-weekly basis, so every other week. And on this page 13 of the Mentor Handbook, we have laid out suggested communication for every other week of your time as a mentor. So you can really use this page as kind of a one-stop shop if you ever need to figure out, hey, what do I need to be sending to my students? What do they need to be communicated, or what information is pertinent to them at this time? This is quite honestly one of my favorite pages of the handbook, just because I think for you as a mentor, it makes it really, really easy to figure out where we're at in the program and what needs to go out to students. But again, with this page, I would really stress that personalization is important. We very much recognize that you as the mentor know your students best. You are the one building a relationship with your students. So make these templates your own. Feel free to add in your own notes of encouragement, your own kind of questions or things you may be wanting to know from the students. While the information here and kind of the details of this page are really important to communicate to students, kind of the nuances is up to you. So personalize it, make it your own, and work to build that relationship with your students, because again, ultimately, the personal connection you build with your students is really important. And while these templates are here as a resource, we want you to build these into your own, really personalize them, and establish that positive connection with your students. So use the handbook in terms of templates and guides to make sure you're getting the best information to your students when they need to get it. And one of the first big things you're going to work on with your students is getting to that mandatory meeting in December or January. Then if you'll jump to page 6 of the handbook, I want to spend just a little bit of time talking about that mandatory meeting. In the student list email that you got on Monday, the date, time, location information for your mandatory meeting is going to be outlined there. I'd encourage you to get it on your calendar now, get it saved, and make plans to be there. It is mandatory that every student attend this meeting in order to stay eligible for Tennessee Promise. And we strongly encourage every mentor to attend this meeting, just because it's a really, really critical opportunity to get all of your students around a table at one time, to get to know them, and to really start building the foundation of an effective mentor-mentee relationship. So save the date for that meeting and make plans to be at that session. We are really going to focus on mentors at this meeting. Our staff is going to be in attendance at each and every one of them. We're going to facilitate a brief presentation as well as kind of all the logistics, right? Signing in, getting the meeting set up. But we're going to provide an activity for you, and we're going to provide ample time during this session for you as a mentor to just talk to your students, to get to know them and to get to know their goals. So we'll provide that presentation, but really cornerstone of this meeting is going to be that mentor-mentee connection. So it's in your best interest to be there, to make use of that time and to get to know your group all at one time. You will notice with these meetings, they are earlier in the day. They're really either during the school day for students or immediately after the school day for your students. We've done this intentionally. to make sure more students access this meeting in 2022 and 2023. So they won't run into transportation problems getting to and from the meeting a couple hours after the school day. Instead, now we're going to take students during their school day, immediately after, and we're going to get them right into this meeting. So what this means for you as a mentor is you're likely going to be meeting with more of your students at one time, and you're going to have an opportunity to really get to know them all at one time. So we have moved this up a little bit earlier in the day. We know that this may, provide some or mean that you have to shift some things around a little bit. And we really appreciate any effort you can take to be at this meeting, to make sure you're there and meet your students at this session. Like I said earlier, this meeting is mandatory for students. They need to be there to stay eligible. We do understand, though, that in some cases, students may have a practice, a game, transportation problems, whatever it may be, that do prevent them from being at this session at the given time. Ben, if you'll scroll down here just a little bit, we've got outlined our mandatory meeting excuse form policy. One thing we do not want this meeting to become is an obstacle to a student maintaining Tennessee Promise eligibility, right? We want to accommodate students. We want to make sure students can stay eligible. So we do have this excuse form policy outlined on page 6 of our handbook and also on our website. If you do have a student who says, hey, I can't be there, I've got a game, I've got practice, I'm sick, whatever it may be, refer them to this excuse form policy and have them get it submitted to our team. Because we're going to provide a webinar for them during the month of February so that a student who can't be there in person still can access the critical information and stay eligible for Tennessee Promise throughout their time as a student and into their freshman year of college. So do refer them to that excuse form policy. And if you do have a student who can't be there, I would just recommend for you as a mentor that you make arrangements to meet them virtually, you meet them at a coffee shop at another time, still make every effort to meet with that student. But we do understand that in some cases, students might not be able to be there at the given time. It is our expectation that for you as a mentor, we will have you in and out of this meeting in about an hour and 15 minutes. So we will ask that all mentors arrive about 10 to 20 minutes early to get signed in, find your spot, and make sure we can get that meeting started on time. But we want to be mindful of your day. We want to get you back on the road as quickly as possible. So we will dismiss on time. We'll get started on time. We won't take up more than an hour and 15 minutes of your day for this mandatory meeting. It is a really great, and I think I speak for our entire team again when I say we're really excited to be returning to these in-person meetings, to be getting back to meeting our students in person, to be getting back to, seeing mentors and students around a table together is really getting back to our roots at tnAchieves. And I'm really, really excited to see the connections that you guys build and to see these relationships really take off so much earlier than ever before. So make every effort possible to be at this meeting. I think it's going to be a great opportunity for you as a mentor to get to know your students and to build these relationships. Ben, if you'll just jump to page 4 really quickly, I want to highlight this page and then I'll kick it back over to Graham here. But once you have this mandatory meeting, it's really going to be kind of a matter of keeping in touch with your students and making sure that they're on the right track towards staying eligible for Promise and starting college in the fall. And this program's milestone page is going to serve as a really critical guide for everything you need to really do as a mentor to keep your students on the right track. So this is going to include information on filing the FAFSA by March 1st, registering for classes and applying by June 1st, and then completing community service by July 1st. These are all really critical deadlines we've got outlined on the program milestone page. This is a page that if you keep handy in your handbook, I think it's going to be really, really valuable to you. But I would also stress that all of the things outlined on this milestones page are going to be broken up for you and sent in these Monday emails that we send each and every week. Just as the handbook is a really great resource for you as a mentor, I think that our Monday emails are probably up there with the top 3 resources we provide each year, just because every single Monday, our team is going to put together an email that contains critical need to know information for you as a mentor. And it's going to include a template that you can send out to your students to make it really easy to get the information you need to your students when you need it. So keep in touch touch with this program milestones page, but also know that we're going to break this up really in bite-sized chunks for you each and every Monday, so you get the information that your students need when they need it. If you ever find you aren't getting that Monday email, reach out to mentors@tnAchieves.org, and we'll make sure we've got a good email for you. You're getting that communication and you're able to relay it along to your students. But we're really excited to be kicking off 2023, really excited to be kicking it off in November of 2022. I think it's a big win for you as a mentor. I think this year is really critical for the program, critical for our students, and we can't thank you enough for joining us in this effort. So I'm going to kick it back over to Graham to talk just a little bit about communication best practices and expectations. But thank you again to everyone for hopping on today.
Yeah, thanks so much, Tyler. I want to echo Tyler's sentiments. We are really excited to be back in the high school so that you can sit down and meet your students, get to know them face to face. And so I'm going to give you a few tips first about communicating with your students. So you got your list on Monday. And for most of your students, it's going to have a phone number and email, as well as a parent phone number and email, like Tyler mentioned. Not all the parents have the communication on there. So if you can't get to the parent, don't get too hung up on it. Go ahead, move to the student. When you talk to the student, you can always confirm their information. Just to be really honest with you, the first communication with Tennessee Promise students can be very challenging. I've seen a lot of questions in the chat about, like, do they know that you're going to be contacting them? Like, they do know that they have a mentor that will be reaching out to them. They don't know though that it's you. Like, they don't know that it's Tyler Ford, right? So we give you the opportunity to reach out first. At some point, we do send them your information, but we want to give you the opportunity to reach out and make that connection first. So how do you do that? We've given you all these different tools. So you have an email address. I think a lot of our mentors really like to start in the email with an email, introduce yourself. You can get a little more information in there. I think that's fine. But what I would recommend is that you then follow up with a text message. Say, hey, Tyler, I'm Graham. I'm your Tennessee Achieves mentor. Really excited to work with you and see you on December 7th or whatever your meeting date is. I sent you an email with a lot more information. Text message is just the best way to reach them, especially that first time. You can always call them, you can leave them a voicemail, but texting is the best way to reach 17 and 18-year-olds these days. Another thing that we hear from our students is that when you reach out to them individually, you're much more likely to get a response. So what I think a lot of our mentors do is they put their group of students on a group text message and they send them out a reminder about a deadline. And I think it's really impactful around deadlines, right? Like a couple days before your meeting, like, hey, don't forget, we're meeting at whatever high school in a couple of days. Or on June 30th, like, don't forget, the community service deadline is tomorrow. I think it works really well. But what our students tell us is that those group messages about deadlines feels like a calendar reminder, and it doesn't always feel like there's a person on the other end of that. But when you reach out and say, hey, Tyler, the community service deadline is next week. I see that you've done 4 hours. Do you have a plan for your other 4? What are you going to do for your other 4? I volunteer at the local Humane Society. Would you like to come with me? When you make it more personalized like that, you're much more likely to hear back from them. You can also just ask them to respond that they received your message. And so sometimes that works really well too, especially in that initial message, to just say, hey, I sent you an email with a lot more information. Did you get that? Right? Anytime that you ask them a specific question, it typically elicits, you're more likely to get a response. My other advice for you in communicating with students is that when you do send those group messages, if you send it to 7 or 8 students and one of them is like rapid fire texting back, like maybe pick up the phone and then call that one, right? Because sometimes they may have questions or information that they don't necessarily want to share with their peers that they go to high school with. And so talking to that one off of the group text oftentimes will work better, and you can get more information out of those students. So those are some just general communication tips in terms of how to reach them. The other thing I will say is be persistent. They can be really hard to reach, like I mentioned earlier, the first time, going and meeting them at their meeting will help. Like once they see you and get to know like, oh, there is a real human and not a robot on the other end of this text message, that really tends to help. But what we know is that, yes, our students may ignore 7 of your text messages in a row. But when they need help and when they get confused and they're not sure what the next step is, they will reach out. I will tell you that the high school students also will not necessarily prioritize the things that we, all you and I and Tyler and our team at tnAchieves, think they should be prioritizing. The prom is more important. The baseball game is more important. The softball game is more important. Whatever's going on Friday night is more important. And while we know that August of 2023, when they start college, is going to be here before they know it, feels like a really long way away for a high school student. So, that's part of the reason that we have the mentoring program in place, is that our mentors are much better at thinking long term and helping students prepare for what feels like an eon away for students, right? Chrissy, our CEO, always says that 17 and 18-year-olds aren't rational actors, right? Which means they wouldn't always make the decision that you and I would expect them to make. That's part of being 17 and 18, right? Sometimes you don't make the best decision and you learn from those things, right? Or you don't think ahead and then you're scrambling to do your community service hours on the day that they're due. And so, that's why we created this program, is so that you can reach out and try to help keep them on track. But just know that college and the college going process is not always their priority. Be persistent. One of the things that I always say to people is, don't let the 17 and 18-year-old student hurt your feelings, right? Like if they ignore a couple of your text messages, they're probably not ignoring them. They're not responding. They're getting them, right? It's not because, it's not personal to you. It's just they've got other things going on. They've got school and work and sports and extracurricular activities. And so sometimes they're just not the best at responding. I'm going to give you a really concrete example of what I mean by this. My mother-in-law is mentored. This will be her 3rd year. And 2 years ago, she had a student in her group that they made some initial connections, but then she didn't hear from her for a long time. And the student told her that she was going to go to a cosmetology school in Kentucky. And then like August 10th rolled around and the student got a $30,000 bill from the cosmetology school in Kentucky and hit the panic button, reached out to my mother-in-law, who then reached out to me. We got the student applied and enrolled at TCAT Dixon in a cosmetology program, tuition free, right? So the student that realized she couldn't afford $30,000 a year got enrolled in a Tennessee Promise eligible program and is now about to graduate with the same degree, totally tuition free. Kathy, my mother-in-law, went from talking to this student once or twice to they have stayed in touch her entire college career. They speak almost weekly. So, she stayed persistent with her. She didn't give up on her, and it's turned into a really meaningful relationship. The other thing I want to talk to you a little bit about is the group. So I mentioned earlier that everyone's got a group of students. This graphic that you see on the screen here is data-wise indicative of what our mentors will do. You'll start with about 10 and you're going to end up with about 2. So a couple of things with your group. When you go and you sit down and meet with them at the high school over the next couple of months, that's your chance to really fill that group out. So let's say you have 10 students and 5 of them show up with their parents. They've applied to college. They know where they want to go. Their parents are there. Their parents are supportive. They've got a really good path. Maybe 2 or 3 of them show up. Maybe a parent's there. Maybe a parent isn't there. And maybe they've applied. Maybe they know where they want to go, but they haven't really done much in the process. And then you got 1 or 2 that showed up because the school told them they had to come. They don't know why they're there. They're not really sure about college, right? So that first 5 in this scenario, the 5 that are well supported by their parents, like reach out to them and work with them and be a resource, right? But you probably really want to dig in on those other 5, the ones that have kind of started the process, but don't really know what they want to do, and the ones that have no clue. I mean, what we really want to do with Tennessee Promise is provide a path for the student today. I saw several mentors in the chat said they were from Antioch High School, so I'm just going to pick on Antioch. But students that are maybe at Antioch High School today with their heads on the desk because they don't think there's a path for them after college, and we want to get you to them and provide them with a path, right, that will lead to them being successful. The other thing that you're going to see in your group is you may have some students that are going to go to the military, which is a really great opportunity for a lot of students. You're going to have students in your group that are going to go to four-year universities outside the scope of Tennessee Promise. So University of Tennessee, MTSU, Memphis, Tennessee Tech, Austin Peay, wherever, out of state. Those students are also setting themselves up to be successful. And then you may have one or two students in your group that actually plan to use Tennessee Promise. Here's what I really, if you only hear me say one thing all day today, this is it. Do not judge your success as a mentor based on the percentage of your group that use Tennessee Promise. And what I mean by this is if you have 10 students and 6 of them go to a four-year university, like that is a huge success for them, right? Like they are setting themselves up to be successful. You can still send them reminders. You can still answer their questions. They're not going to receive the financial benefit of Tennessee Promise, but they still have the benefit of having a person in their corner advocating for them, right? If you have one or two that want to go to the military, support them, answer any questions that you can. Again, setting themselves up to be successful. If you only have one student in this process that goes through the entire process and begins college next fall using Tennessee Promise, that is a giant win for you. It is a giant win for that student and for our state. I said earlier at the very beginning of the presentation that 7,000 less students are going to college right now than 2 years ago. This is just some lucky math, but it turns out that there are about 7,000 of you trained mentors working with students using Tennessee Promise. If each one of you gets one student to college next fall that was not going to go to college before, then our college going rate is back in the mid-60s where it was pre-pandemic, and that is a huge win for everyone involved. Now, we are in the people business, right? Like we are working with people. We're not working with widgets. And you've got to really stop, I think, and think about that. You're going to get a group of students that are coming to you from very different places, from different backgrounds. They have differing levels of support at home. And so you got to keep that human element at the forefront of what it is that you are doing. If you get that one student to college that was never going to go to college before, that is life-changing for that student. And what the data shows is that that is life-changing for that student's family for generations to come. If you get a first-generation student who no one in their family has ever gone to college before, the data shows that their kids will then go to college. And so you are making generational impact. And so really think about that when you're working with students. Here's what you should not do. Don't get your group of 10 students and 7 of them go to the university and 1 of them goes to the military and only 1 of them uses Tennessee Promise, and then consider yourself a failure because only 1 of your 10 use Tennessee Promise. Our goal is not to take the student. I just saw Independence High School pop up. So in Williamson County, our goal is not to take the student at Independence High School that is going to MTSU next fall and say, no, go to Columbia State. We want them to go to college somewhere, anywhere. For us, it does not matter where. We just want to provide a path for students to be successful. So really think about that, like these individual students when you're working with them, and don't measure your success on the percentage that actually end up using Tennessee Promise, because odds are about 1/3 of our total applicant pool on a good year, about 1/3 pre-pandemic, about 1/3 of our applicants actually use Tennessee Promise. It's been lower than that the last couple of years because of COVID. So just kind of keep those student stories at the forefront of what you're doing. So I'm going to stop talking about this now. I'm going to bring Ben's going to join us and bring any questions that you may have.
Yeah, well, thanks everyone for joining us. What a great turnout early in the morning. I'm really excited to be working with you this year. So many new mentors in the chat. That's great to see. A lot of great questions. I feel like we've answered a lot of them. A lot of them have been pretty specific to individual mentor experiences. Graham, if you want to talk a little bit more about so I remember there was a question yesterday that I thought was a good question, and it sort of relates to one that Nick asked here in the chat about this idea of helping students decide maybe where they want to go. I know you've talked some about students that have already made up their mind and they're going to a four-year college and how that may work. But what we know is that a lot of students have no idea at this point where they plan to go to college in the fall, or if they even want to. And so as that conversation begins to happen, and I think that's probably the most critical role of a mentor in general, how do you see that conversation going, and how should mentors address that idea of helping students decide where they want to go?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So when you go and sit down with your students next month or in January, you're going to get a group that are coming to you, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, from very different places. So if they are interested in the four-year universities, like the University of Tennessee, MTSU, Memphis, Tech, all those places, they should have already applied for most of those four universities, out-of-state universities. They should have already applied. Our community colleges and TCATs in Tennessee will accept their application like through the first week of their college classes. So we're talking 9 months from now, they're still processing applications. And so a lot of our mentors are always like, isn't it too late? Shouldn't they have already applied? I mean, in an ideal world, yes, they have already applied. But for most of our students, they have not already applied. So, and it's not too late for the institutions that serve Tennessee Promise students. So when you sit down with them, find out what it is they want to do. Every single college, if you Google them, has a list of programs. College representatives are invited to these meetings. Hopefully at most meetings, the local college representatives will be there and can help answer questions. Not always, they can't make it to every single one, but at many of them, there will be a college representative there that can help answer questions about programs. But Dr. Faulkner, who is the president at Volunteer State Community College, told a story recently that he was mentoring students in our program. And he had a student that was like, I'm excited that I have the president of Vol State as my mentor. I'm really excited because that's where I want to go. And he was like, that's great. I'm happy to help you. And he's like, I really want to go into welding. And Dr. Faulkner was like, well, we don't do welding at Vol State. We need to get you to a TCAT. I know all those people too. I'll help you do that. And he was like, oh, no. I'll just do psychology. Like, well, those welding and psychology are two very different things, right? And so I had a conversation with the student about like, if welding is what you want to do, and is what you are excited about, like, don't come to Vol State just because that's what it's close to your house, right? So, you're going to have those conversations with students about where they want to go and find the best fit. Like I said, all those colleges are really good resources for you. Our team is a really good resource for you. But like I mentioned earlier too, like if you have a student that sits down with you and is dead set on a four-year university, like support them through that. Don't try to convince them to go to the local community college. Now, if it's going to be, a financial burden, that's a conversation to have for sure. But we just want students going to college somewhere. So they're going to come to you. Some of them will have applied. Some of them will not. Some of them know where they want to go. Some of them don't. You're also going to have students that are going to sit down with you in January and they're going to say, like, I want to go to the University of Tennessee. And you're going to be like, that's great. Have you applied? And they're going to say no. Deadline was this fall, right? Or you're going to talk to them. You're going to find out they have a 17 on their ACT. Like, you can't go to UT with a 17 on your ACT. And so your job in those conversations is not to say, hey, you can't go to UT. Your job is to say, hey, Tennessee Promise is a really great backup plan. Why don't you remain eligible in case you change your mind? They at some point will realize that they're not going to make it to UT. So, you want to keep this path open for students. We also see so many students that think they're going to a four-year university, and then August rolls around, they get cold feet, they don't want to move far away from home, and they'll come back and use Tennessee Promise. So as long as they've met those requirements, it is still there for them. That was a really long-winded answer to your question, Ben.
Sounds great. I know that we only have a few minutes left kind of here, but I know that we have some questions, and there was a lot of questions yesterday about Connect. So Tyler, I'm going to sort of just prompt you to talk real quickly about Connect. I'm going to pull the screen back up and go to that page in the handbook. But do you want to talk just a little bit about how Connect works, what's its purpose in the mentor experience, and also how students would know about Connect and know how to activate that process?
Yeah, well, I'll take that piece of this first, right? How do students find out about it? We're actively communicating it to students now. So throughout the fall, as we have gotten our class of 2023 applicants, they've received an introduction email from Tennessee Achieves that includes information about what Connect is. It includes their activation information so they can log on and activate their profile. And then we will continue to communicate that to them through really December, January, and make it kind of a piece of our communication to students, right? So we do work to get the information to students so that they can activate, join you, and start communicating with you as a mentor on the platform. For you as a mentor, this really serves as kind of a hub for your communication with students. What Connect allows you to do is have all of your students in a centrally located spot, send them messages that are sent as text notifications and emails to your students directly. So what I like about that for you is that it kind of gone are the days of having to send an email to your students and then send a text message, and copy and paste this information across a bunch of different forums. Instead, now you can send a message in Connect and it'll be distributed through multiple different platforms to your students. But really on a fundamental level too, it allows you to track your students, I think, in a more meaningful way. You can see not only student profile information, right? So what are their hobbies, their interests, what are their career plans, possibly if they've updated that. But you can also see how many community service hours does your student have logged? What college is your student anticipating attending? Have they registered and applied, which is data we'll be able to populate there in the summer. So we're always, every single day, populating Connect with new information that can help you to better serve your students. And Connect also allows you to take notes on your students and to track their progress towards key milestones and goals. So it's really just a great kind of online hub where you can track your students, take notes, track their progress, and also schedule video chats, calls, and follow-up meetings with your students, which I think is a huge benefit of the platform. I think in the past, our mentors would meet students once, they would stay in touch with them over text message, and then meet them again in the fall in some cases. But now what Connect allows you to do is have this meeting in December or January, and then a month later, schedule a follow-up with them. And then a month after that, schedule a follow-up with them if you want. It just allows you to stay in touch, I think, in an easier and more centralized hub sort of tool. The one thing I would stress with Connect is that this is a tool in your mentor toolbox. Graham talked a lot earlier about communication best practices, and I would echo those as we talk about Connect. It is likely, I would say, that at this stage, your students are going to be easier reached over text message than they will over Tennessee Achieves Connect. They may even be easier reached over email than Tennessee Achieves Connect, simply because it is so new to them. So especially early on, text your students, email your students, and send them Connect messages. Try them across a number of different forums and find what works. I would say that when you have that initial meeting in December or January, our team will talk a little bit about Connect, but you as a mentor too can really push your students to check the platform frequently and to stay in touch with you there. So don't get discouraged. Don't feel like the platform isn't working. If your students aren't responding to you there right now, we are pairing you with your students actually yesterday and today, so you'll likely get them within the next few days here. It does take a little bit of time, but reach out to your students over a number of different forums and just know that Connect is a great resource for you, but it is certainly just a tool in your toolbox. We'd still encourage you to text, email, and try to stay in touch with them over a number of different forums until you find what works. I would add to just really quickly, we've got on the platform, and we'll send this out to you as well, tutorials on the platform. So how to create a profile, how to message your students. So navigate to My Pathways. And if you're new to the platform, there's going to be a lot of great trainings on how to best leverage it.
Awesome. So many good questions. Thanks, Tyler. Graham, one last question, then I think you can probably wrap it up. I know that we have sort of alluded to Tennessee Promise eligible institutions, and I know this can be a little bit complicated, but just give us 30,000 feet view here about students utilizing Tennessee Promise at four-year institutions like, say, Cumberland.
Yeah, great question. So the Tennessee Promise makes college tuition and fee free at all 13 community colleges and 26 Tennessee colleges of applied technology. If you're not familiar with our TCATs, we have a technical college system here in Tennessee, 26 of them around the state, where students go and get those hard skills like welding, HVAC, mechatronics, things like that. Really great option for students. There's also about 25 four-year universities that accept Tennessee Promise. There are two caveats there. First is that they all offer associate degree programs, so a student must be enrolled in one of the associate degree programs. And second, they get what they would receive financially at the local community college. So the most popular one in terms of where Tennessee Promise students enroll is Austin Peay State University in Clarksville. They have a 2-year general studies associate degree program, so all their incoming freshmen can be enrolled in that. And Austin Peay is about twice, their tuition is about twice that of our community colleges, meaning that Tennessee Promise and their other aid will pay about half. Another really popular option for students is Cumberland University. Cumberland actually waives tuition for all Tennessee Promise students, so it is tuition free. Bethel in West Tennessee has a program like that for like up to 30 students, I think it is. Each one of those colleges handles it a little bit differently. Many of those colleges like Austin Peay and Cumberland have that general studies associate degree where they can go in, any incoming freshman can go in, get the general studies, and then they can seamlessly stay and earn a bachelor's degree. Others like Tennessee State University in Nashville have like one 30-seat dental hygiene associate degree program. So they're all very different. And it can get really confusing for students because we have students, for example, that want to go to like TSU, but they're not in dental hygiene and they see it on the list, and we've got to have those conversations with them. So four-year students that are interested in using Tennessee Promise at a four-year university, they really need to do two things. They need to be working closely with their admissions counselor to make sure that they are in an eligible Tennessee Promise program. And second, they need to be working closely with the financial aid office to understand what the financial cost will be after Tennessee Promise is applied. For some of the schools, some of the private institutions are, $30,000 plus a year, and the most that Promise is going to pay is about $4,500. Puts a dent in it, but not always a big dent. So they need to be working with the colleges to make sure they're in an eligible program and they understand the cost.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would just reiterate that this information is found in our handbook. Once you receive your student or your mentor handbook, it is, let's see, which page? Page 15 right here has all of the eligible institutions and a summary of what Graham just said. And then you can also find that information on our website, tnAchieves.org/colleges. We'll take you there. So awesome. Thanks for answering that, Graham. I think that's pretty much all of the main kind of broad questions that we have. We've been answering some questions as we've gone along here. And if you ever have any other questions from us or if any other questions about your experience, please reach out to us. We're happy to help. I'll highlight our information here, all of our contact information for the three of us that are here to help you. I'm going to let Tyler and Graham wrap us up here.
Yeah, I just will wrap us up by saying thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for investing in students in your community. And please, anytime you need anything, let us know. Those numbers that you see listed on the screen here in front of you, those are our personal cell phone numbers. So you can always call us, text us, email us. We give those phone. Hey, Janice, I didn't see that you were on here. Janice is one of our long mentors from Sevier County. You can also, the students have this information. I will tell you that the students are not afraid to text us at not necessarily during work hours. So if you've got questions in the evening, don't be afraid to reach out and let us know. We're happy to help, because what we know is that if you're asking us a question, it's because a student is asking you a question. And so we want to get back to you and make sure you can help that student. And so, our staff is bigger than it's ever been. We've got a staff of 45 now, 30 of which coach students through college once they're in. So you play this really, really important role for us on the access side, because there's 64,000 of them and there's 45 of us, and that's a numbers game that we are going to lose every single time. But you working in your small groups make all the difference in the world. It's the reason that we all get to wake up and do this work every day. So thank you so much for investing in students and being here with us on this journey this year.
Thank you so much for everyone hopping on. Really appreciate it. We got 300 people on a webinar at 7:30, 8:30 in the morning on a Thursday, which is really exciting. And it's exciting to know 300 people are going to start serving students this week. So thanks for hopping on, and I'd echo what Graham and Ben said. Let us know how we can help you, because you're a critical piece of this work. So thank you all.
Thanks, guys.